Hello and welcome everyone. This is the Human to Pharma platform by Pharmaceutical Academy, and here we are with another inspirational journey, direct Dilse, where we'll be having a heart-to-heart light conversation with a pharma leader. To everyone who is hearing me out, today I am Adas Gandhi will be taking you along for another pharma inspirational journey. Please welcome Sadhan Bhattacharya sir, an esteemed personality with vast expertise in academia, industry and executive coaching. He is the founder and chief curator of WhaleDone Learning, and his unwavering dedication to the fusion of business acumen and learning efficacy has made him a luminary figure in the field of talent development and cultural transformation landscape. With a successful career at renowned institutions like Johnson Johnson and Abbott, along with his contributions to shaping the minds of future leaders at prestigious B schools, Southern Sir simply exemplifies his commitment to fostering purposeful leadership, personal branding, and the cultivation of a coaching culture with the pharmaceutical industry. Starting on a very casual note, sir, how are you?
Thank you, Madhav, for this invitation to interact with you and through you and your channel with uh, with thousands and possibly a couple of millions of pharmaceutical professionals within the country and even outside. Uh, Interestingly, this is one of those industries which is very conservative looking, even as we speak today, compared to many other flamboyant and flashing sunrise industries. However, there is a lot to be told, retold, and revisited for pharmaceutical industry, medtech industry, healthcare industry in general. And hopefully, over the next half an hour or so, our conversation would shed some light on those.
Thank you, sir. Sir, before we start off with all the questions, usual questions, I want to know how a typical day of yours look like on a daily basis.
Look, it's slightly different these days, having come out of the industry actively, being employed within the industry. Now I am a freelancer. I run my own consulting gig called WhaleDone Learning, which is into human resources, capital building, teaching, consulting, and executive coaching. And hence my schedules slightly look different from what it used to be a year earlier. Uh, Definitely, when you are part of the organizations, you are governed by your KPIs on a very defined basis. However, when you run your own business, your own consulting outfit, such as the one that I do, many a times, unknowingly, unwittingly, the lines get blurred, and that's where defining one's daily schedule is so important. And I'm still trying to cope with that transition for myself over the last couple of months. But yeah, every day is a new beginning, new challenge. You pick up the stake and start working all the way. So no set guidelines as you would expect from a defined corporate, but here you are self-imposed with your own choices, priorities, which are deeply aligned to what you want to do in your last leg of career, as I would say, because I see distinctively two-thirds of my career being part of different journeys within the industry. The last one-third of the career progression is something that I would like to command at my own disposal. So much, I would say, choices to be made of my own, but priorities are definitely there to guide my hourly engagements.
Okay, that's good to know, sir. Oh, so starting off with my first question, reflecting on your childhood, were there any experiences or role models that shaped your aspirations and career trajectory, particularly in the context of your eventual journey into leadership and organizational development?
I can relate to two incidents here. First, when I was a child, I was studying in middle school, high school. Those days, part of my residence with my parents, where my father used to work, and I used to have a kind of say, image of manager or a leader, was essentially the general manager of the entire raw materials divisions where my father worked for Steel Authority of India Limited. And he conjured up a distinctive image of a manager, so to say, in those days. Very
Yeah.
hard-nosed, very hierarchical in nature. I would say many of his, employees, including my father, waiting for his appointments to come in, many times even outside his chamber. So that gave me a very unique flair and an insight of managing a team, of managing an enterprise, so to say. However, when I went from my college days, I was given great lessons in leadership and practitioners' insight from very unrelated quarters, coming in all the way from my physics professor. I found him to be much more participative, much more welcoming, though he was heading the department. His thoughts were much ahead of his times. So, in fact, as I started working on the domains of personal branding, much later in my career, it all started in 2013, 14, but almost two and a half decades, or even 3 decades before, my physics professor planted those seeds of thoughts of selling yourself to the external world. His style was much more participative, much more welcoming of new ideas compared to and contrasted to the earlier manager that I just described. So these were a couple of contrasting views of how to lead teams, how to lead even students. So yeah, so very contrasting views, but very insightful, and those have stayed with me, stuck with me ever since.
Okay. That's good to know, sir. So my next question is, what has inspired you to pursue a path focusing on learning and organizational effectiveness?
I would say it was not by design, so to say. Honestly speaking, I never thought it to be that way because my career started in pharmaceutical industries for most of the average employee as a sales rep way back in 94, 95. And though it was something that I never chose myself for, as it happens with many of the sales professionals, especially in pharmaceutical industry. And I was even at one point in time dead sure to call it a quit within 3 months of time. However, some attachment, some thrill, some excitement, meeting new people, new customers, gave me those kind of hook, which made me stay for longer, and it eventually stayed with me for whole of my career within the pharmaceutical medtech industries. However, if I look into and kind of say slice and dice my own career journey of 30 years, I can slice it almost closed from the middle into two halves. First half of which spent into sales and marketing, but the second half, most importantly and interestingly, was more on the people side of the business, people development, people capabilities, talent framework within the organizations, learning and OD projects, and ultimately leading to executive coaching. So I would say my inherent interest in conceptualizing, theorizing the things, and most importantly, a mindset to help others get better in what they can do in the initial days shaped up my interest in taking up those additional projects. Many a times, those projects were voluntarily taken up by me without even informing my superiors. At one point in time, I can narrate such stories. But in hindsight, I can see those actually were the seedings of my love for learning, helping teams and individuals grow to their potential. So it was not much of a design, but it went by, and luckily it stayed with me.
Okay, that's good to know, sir. Sir, any specific moment or achievement from your early career which might have motivated you to grow more in your career?
Could you repeat this last part,
Okay,
please?
okay. Sir, any specific moment or achievement from your early career which has contributed a lot to your growth? as a leader in the pharmaceutical space?
Yeah, as I was narrating just now, that eventually I developed a passion for interaction with unknown and stranger people
Okay.
from different walks of life through my job requirement as a sales professional. That really has, to a large extent, helped me shape up my my opportunities and interest in developing others and help them find their true potential.
Okay.
So put me into any unknown or a kind of say, a foreign terrain where I might not have any acquaintances, I can make it work for me very easily. And that insights came up from my early encounters, which was quite reluctantly in the initial phase, as I mentioned. But those helped me shape up with my attitude towards uh, building interpersonal relationship, communicating with strangers, helping them reflect and so on and so forth. So I think those are some of my initial professional requirements which shaped up ultimately. I would also narrate an interesting story uh, about a project which was taken up voluntarily by me without even letting my organization and my managers in the initial days know, was about mapping up brand characters and talking about brand characters for original research molecules in pharmaceutical industry in those days. I'm talking of mid 90s or early even 2000, were quite unheard of. And we had a research molecule in cardiovascular heart disease space, and those were also very much well prescribed by the medical fraternity. So I, along with one of my summer trainees, I was a frontline manager at that point in time, went on to chart out a brand persona for this particular original brand, how it was placed within the mind space of cardiologist. And when I presented the findings to my marketing head in one of the conferences, he was awestruck. So that also was one of my seedling in the initial days to switch side into more of conceptualization, training and development, learning, capability building sort of things.
Okay. Got it, sir. Sir, as someone you are deeply involved in both academia and industry, how do you see the intersection between theoretical knowledge and practical application involving in the pharmaceutical industry? And what role do you envision yourself playing in bridging this gap?
That's a great question and very contextual also, uh, given the fact that new education policy of 2020 has put a premium on deeper industry and academia collaboration.
Yes.
So many of the curricula which are taught in business schools or otherwise in the academic institutions are mostly theoretical in nature. And this is one of the tripping points for industry professionals that institutions don't churn out industry ready professionals. However, I see there are two sides of the coins here. It is true that institutions or academic institutions need to be much more contemporary in their curriculum outlooks, very open towards collaborating with the industry professionals. Even industry professionals should be on the panel of their visiting faculty, guest lectures very regularly and not by exception. I also see the other way around of the spectrum where more of academic leaders, researchers, they should be involved not only as kind of say guest speakers for the corporates, but they should be actively involved in active research and development, special projects within the organization on a very regular basis. This seamless diffusion between the academia and industry, according to me, is very important. Let me give you a quick example here. Often we say we train people within the organizations, whether it is frontline individual contributors or their managers and leaders, and we ask them to apply those learnings. And often we find there is a great difficulty in transferring the classroom learning into their real workplace. So that's what we say, apply the theory. So application based. However, even if there are very successful business leaders and managers who by all the standards of success are very known, do they really contribute towards their learning as theories and theories of practice, which can be fed back to the academia? So there is a strong two-way possibility of cross-linkages of learning from academia being actively transferred onto the industry side. Similarly, the learning from the industry can also reverse flow back to the academia. So I think in my own small and very humble way, I'm trying to bring in some kind of a mind shift, talking to various academic leaders, because I've been on the other side of the table for far too long. Now it's my turn to influence some of those on the academic sides in their leadership capabilities so that they welcome wholeheartedly the contributions, active contributions from industry professionals and veterans.
Okay, that's very insightful, sir. So my next question is around the concepts of personal branding and purposeful leadership. Sir, how do you believe that these concepts of personal branding and purposeful leadership are important in contributing in building a resilient and sustainable organizational culture within the pharmaceutical industry?
Look, linkage between personal branding and purposeful leadership to resilience, I'm not very sure about, but let me pull out what it does for individual talent, and as an extension, what does it do to the teams and ultimately the organization and its culture. The concept of personal branding is not new as we speak. It is more than 3 decades now. First, the term was coined by by Porter himself, and ever since various people have worked and theorized that. I believe personal branding is for everyone, and without an exception, it cuts across what you do, whether you are a student, whether you are a teacher, whether you are an individual contributor in an organization or a manager and leader. No one is actually out of its purview. I read somewhere a very interesting fact that you can treat personal branding as your own designation, as your visiting card, and even a billboard, signaling loud about your presence. So that might be a little on the extreme, but in my definition of personal brand, I call it an authentic personal brand. The reason being that it's not about self-promotion alone. It's all about being true to who we are at the core with our purpose and values, and then recognizing our expertise and strength, put them into use for the greater good of your self first, and then your networks and connections or general people at large. So personal branding and having very clearer picture of purpose in life are very important, not only for the concerned individual themselves. It adds value to the teams that they lead. It adds value to the organization that they serve. So I think these are 2 aspects, especially the personal branding one, which I strongly believe that should be made part of regular curriculum in all these schools. Because right from the business school days, these days we see their active presence on the social media of their choice, wherever they want to be featured according to their aspirations and career goals. And hence, it is up for the business schools, especially, to introduce forward-looking curriculum which deals with this emerging field of personal branding, values, purposes, and purpose-led leadership. Curriculum such as this will definitely aid to all the future aspirants and future leaders being churned out by these B schools.
Okay, thank you for sharing this, sir. Sir, away from the boardroom and academia, how do you recharge and find inspiration? Are there any favorite travel destinations, hobbies, or leisure activities that help you rejuvenate your creativity and energy?
Reflecting on that question, I find I'm pretty much unidirectional in that sense. I find my calling, I find my leisure, I find my professional domain all very largely overlap with each other. And that is in reading, writing, researching, journaling, and stuff like that. So in that sense, my preferences are much more kind of say boring, if you will, and very unidirectional. Uh, so my favorite go to kind of the recharge mode would be being quiet with myself, reflections, reading, writing, journaling, and stuff like that. In that sense, I'm
Self-time,
pretty boring.
basically. Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty boring in that sense, if you will.
Nowadays, just sitting idle with yourself is also very important because all the times we are somewhat engaged with the screen, right? And many counselors, many psychologists are suggesting people that to just sit idle with yourself and just reflecting on your daily activities will help you a lot. And in our generation, it's basically people are like finding it very difficult to practice this, and it's one thing which are people trying to achieve. So
So there are some trade-offs and there are certain things to be paid off for being digital native, right? You
yes,
guys are digital natives, so there are certain trade-offs.
yes, sir. So as we are talking about the digital space, my next question is regarding that only. Sir, how do you see the role of digitalization and technology evolving within the pharmaceutical industry, and what opportunities do you see for leveraging digital tools to enhance training effectiveness and efficacy?
I think every business is these days a technology or a technology business, every business. Whether you are in FMCG, whether you are in food business, restaurant, real estate, you call it. Everything is driven by technological interfaces, both forward integrated as well as backward integrated, by which I mean through the entire value spectrum of any business, we can't deny the role of technology's presence. Often these technologies are quite disruptive. Many of us, we don't fully appreciate and fathom the impact of such technologies. To name a few, generative AI is one such space,
Yes,
which is possibly being touted as one of the biggest revolution. And it would be a kind of say discovery ever since fire was discovered. Many people film that way. I'm not an expert on AI, but I'm trying to kind of say grasp the things or two about generative AI and talking about what role I see for generative AI space. I think it is still emerging, and many a times I prefer to call artificial intelligence as augmented intelligence. So the debate about whether AI is going to replace human beings is so much center stage, many a times to the extent of being as a kind of say, paranoia by various quarters and by various vested parties. But I do see with right kind of governance, the role of AI can be transformed as augmented intelligence. And in this case, for driving training effectiveness, learning effectiveness, program effectiveness, I think the tools like chat GPTs of the world, or whether you call it Bard, which is Gemini these days, or any other generative AI platforms, I think they nicely become your collaborators. For example, these days, uh, a learning and development professional doesn't have to do a kind of say days long. Many times, even it takes used to take week long time to write the program content outline. It can be generated within seconds.
Yes.
However, one must maintain a caution here. While you get the raw data, use your own gray cells up there on the skull to leverage what the raw data is being presented. Try to do a cross-referencing, cross-checking about its correctness, authenticity of the claims. What it does, it brings in super efficiency in terms of course designing, curriculum designing, impact evaluation, matrix, and so on and so forth. So in that sense, I find it as a kind of a true assistant. And even if I'm not from the Gen Zs of the workforce, I actively take help of generative AI almost on a daily basis, several times a day.
Sir, point noted. Take it as a collaborator, the role of generative AI. And I truly believe this because it has become so easy to identify if something has been generated from ChatGPT or say Bard because this particular sense of language these generative AI has been using. But with a unique sense of your own conscious, we can actually leverage their generative power to get some real good insights. Thank you for this point, sir. Sir, as someone who has championed coaching and mentoring initiatives, can you share an approach to developing a coaching culture within the pharmaceutical industry and the impact it has on employee engagement and performance?
Look, I would request you to hold a separate session on coaching culture as topic of deep interest for me.
Yes.
Over the last 3-4 years, I've been a coaching COE within an organization that I served last. And based on my empirical research, I have my own model and frameworks on coaching culture and how do organization approach them currently and what could be done differently to drive organization-wise the coaching culture.
Yes.
Basically speaking, coaching should not be viewed as a separate activity by the managers, or for that matter, why to talk about managers alone? Coaching is everyone's responsibility, right? From an individual contributor who has spent some meaningful years in the work. Everyone should be trained, should be supported by the organization and their leaders to become coaches. By saying, I'm not asking everyone to get an ICF certification. That's not the purpose. Coaching should be treated like you speak about strategy, operations in organization. In the similar vein, organizational leaders must treat coaching because by doing so, there are twofold impact. First, it has been amply demonstrated by having coaching like leadership style. You not only have got disproportionate return on investment on executive coaching or for that matter coaching in general, it actually builds organizational muscle for eventual scenarios, whether it is talent, whether it is new market innovation, whether it is competitive onslaught, it better places the organization to deal with such challenges by having coaching like elements in everyday life. So I don't want to recommend that coaching should be treated as a special activity. It should be given the status the way currently we speak about strategy, the way currently we speak about operations and their efficiencies.
Understood. Thank you for making this point, sir. So moving towards the end of this session, let me ask you the final question for today's episode. Finally, considering your multifaceted career spanning across various industries and roles, what do you hope your legacy will be, both professionally and personally, for future generations to remember you by?
I think that's a too tall order a question for me to take for myself. Leaving a legacy would be a little far-fetched at this point in time. But definitely, I would love to be remembered as someone who cared for their own ongoing development. Many a times offered help and suggestions beyond their asking. And as a professional and individual who embodied a learning mindset all the while, no matter what role was I kind of say living at any point in time in my career. So, as a learning individual, someone who passionately champions employee development as the core responsibility of leaders and organizations, and through this, actually, they get ultimate benefits of commercial outcomes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today for this session. It's been a wonderful conversation with you. And with this, I would like to end the session. Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode. And if you have any suggestions for us, please drop your suggestions in the comment box.